The provocation, the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, had witnessed 10,000 years of deliberations, negotiations, and the occasional declaration of war. Its crystalline walls reflected the bioluminescent patterns of 100 different species, each one representing civilizations that had mastered interstellar travel before humanity had discovered fire. Today, those walls would bear witness to what the elder races would later call the Great Miscalculation. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood alone at the speaker's platform, a single human among titans. His dark suit seemed almost comically plain compared to the elaborate exoskeletons, energy fields, and floating consciousness matrices that surrounded him. At 53, with silver threading through his black hair, Marcus had the weathered look of someone who'd spent decades in the diplomatic trenches. His eyes, however, held something the assembled aliens hadn't quite learned to read, a cold, patient calculation that had nothing to do with fear. High Chancellor Vorn of the Vulcan Confederacy rose from his seat, his 4-meter frame of chitinous armor gleaming under the chamber's light. The Vulcans had ruled the Orion Arm for 6 millennia, their military might unquestioned, their word absolute. When Vorn spoke, his voice resonated through translation matrices that made it sound like grinding stone. Human ambassador, the Council has deliberated for the required period. The Kepler frontier systems fall within historical Vulcan territory. Your colonies are in violation of ancient treaties that predate your species' discovery of the wheel. Vorn's mandibles clicked in what passed for Vulcan amusement. You will withdraw all human presence within 30 standard rotations, or face ... consequences. A ripple of agreement passed through the chamber. The Shikari Collective's hive mind representatives pulsed with synchronized approval. The Thelonian Empire's crystalline delegates chimed their support. Even the normally neutral preservers remained silent, which in council politics meant tacit endorsement. Marcus didn't move. He simply smiled, a slight upturn of his lips that somehow made the temperature in the room feel like it had dropped 10 degrees. "No," he said quietly. The chamber fell silent. In 10,000 years, the word "no," delivered so simply, so completely, had rarely been heard in response to a council ultimatum. Vorn's posture shifted, confusion bleeding into irritation. "Perhaps your translation matrix malfunctioned, human. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of reality. You are infants in a galaxy of ancients. You have 400 years of spaceflight. We have millennia. You do not say no to us." Marcus clasped his hands behind his back, his stance relaxed, conversational. "Chancellor Vorn, members of the Council, let me be very clear. Those systems contain 17 human colonies, with a combined population of 42 million people. They've been there for over a century. They were uninhabited when we arrived. Your ancient treaties concern systems you abandoned 6,000 years ago, and never once attempted to reclaim until now, when you noticed we'd made something valuable out of them. Your argument is irrelevant," Vorn thundered. "Might makes right in the void between stars. You lack the power to defy us. Do I?" Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Chancellor, I'm going to give you a piece of advice, completely free of charge. It's something we say on Earth, an old phrase. Try me, and see what happens." Laughter erupted from several delegations. The Shikari's collective amusement manifested as a wave of bioluminescent pulses. Even some of the Thelonians' crystals vibrated with mirth. "Are you threatening us?" Vorn leaned forward, his bulk casting a shadow over the human platform. "You, who possess what 600 warships? 700? We have fleets numbering in the tens of thousands. The Vulcans alone could sweep aside your entire species in a matter of months." Marcus met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not threatening you, Chancellor. I'm warning you. There's a difference. A threat implies I want this confrontation. A warning means I'm trying to prevent you from making a catastrophic mistake. The only mistake, Vorn said, his voice dropping to a menacing rumble, would be continuing this farce of a negotiation. 30 rotations, Ambassador Webb. After that, the Kepler frontier becomes a lesson in humility. Marcus gathered his data tablets, moving with deliberate calm. Then I suppose we'll all learn something in the coming days. But remember, Chancellor, when this is over, when you're looking at what remains of your confederacy, remember that I stood here and gave you every chance to walk away. He turned and left the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the sudden, uncomfortable silence. 23 rotations later, the Vulcan Third Armada struck 3 human research stations in the Kepler 442 system were vaporized in coordinated plasma strikes. The stations had been conducting terraforming research, agricultural development, and xenobiology studies. They were unarmed. The 15,000 scientists, engineers, and their families had no warning and no chance. The Vulcan High Command broadcast the attack across all galactic channels. The message was clear: defy the ancient powers, and this is your fate. They expected outrage from Earth. They expected desperate diplomatic overtures. They expected, perhaps, a futile military response that would justify complete annexation of human space. What they received was silence. For 72 standard hours, Earth's government made no statement. The human colonies went dark, recall codes bringing every civilian vessel behind their borders. The handful of human diplomats still at galactic postings simply smiled politely when questioned and said, "We're awaiting instructions." Vulcan intelligence networks, sophisticated systems that had tracked enemy movements for millennia, detected ... nothing. No fleet mobilizations. No emergency military production. No panic ... just silence. On the 73rd hour, the Vulcan Ninth Fleet 300 warships returning from patrol duty near the Arcturus Gate vanished, not destroyed, not captured, vanished. The last transmission from the flagship was abrupt, sensors detecting spatial anomaly. Energy signatures unknown. Recommend, then nothing. 300 ships, 70,000 Vulcan warriors. Gone as if they'd never existed. The Confederacy's High Command initially assumed a catastrophic spatial phenomena, rogue black hole, perhaps, or a wormhole collapse. They dispatched recovery teams and science vessels. Those vanished 2.4 days after the Kepler 442 massacre. A Vulcan supply convoy of 43 vessels disappeared between 2 stargates. 6 days after, an entire military outpost with a garrison of 10,000 simply stopped responding. When reinforcements arrived, they found the station intact but abandoned, as if every living being had been plucked away by an invisible hand. By the end of the second week, the Vulcan Confederacy had lost over 800 vessels and 37 installations. Not one had sent a distress call that lasted longer than seconds. Not one had inflicted any confirmed damage on whatever was taking them. The galaxy watched in growing horror as the most powerful military force in the Orion Arm began to hemorrhage ships and soldiers into the void. And then, finally, survivors emerged. A Vulcan scout ship, its hull scarred by weapons fire unlike anything in their databases, limped into Confederate space. The crew of 12 had been reduced to 3, all suffering from severe psychological trauma. Their testimony, delivered in broken sentences between screaming fits, spoke of ships that appeared and disappeared like ghosts, weapons that tore holes in reality itself, and machines that thought and moved faster than any living mind could track. Asterisk, they were never there. The surviving captain whispered to the debriefing committee, his eyes wide and unblinking. We'd scanned the sector empty. Then our ships would just ... stop. Systems dying, crew disappearing. And sometimes, just for a moment, you'd see them. Black ships, wrong angles, like they existed in more dimensions than our sensors could detect. And the weapons? He started laughing, a broken, hysteric sound. The weapons don't kill you. They unmake you, like you never existed at all. The recording of that testimony spread through intelligence networks across the galaxy within hours. And in the Grand Chamber, where the Council convened in emergency session, a message appeared on every display simultaneously. It was text only, stamped with the seal of Earth's diplomatic corps. We warned you. Ambassador Webb requests an audience in 72 hours. We suggest you accept. High Chancellor Vorn, watching his mighty Confederacy bleed from wounds he couldn't see or understand, looked at that message and felt something Velkans hadn't experienced in 6,000 years. Fear. Asterisk. The reckoning the Grand Chamber looked different now. The bioluminescent displays seemed dimmer, a confidence that had permeated its crystalline walls replaced by intention thick enough to taste. Representatives from 47 species sat in attendance, but the chamber felt emptier than it had 2 weeks ago. The Velkan delegation had shrunk from 12 members to 4, and High Chancellor Vorn's chitinous armor no longer gleamed. It was scorched and hastily repaired, bearing the marks of an attack on his personal flagship 3 days prior. Ambassador Marcus Webb walked to the speaker's platform with the same measured pace as before. But this time, no one laughed. No one whispered. Every sensor, every optical organ, every consciousness in the room focused on the human who had promised them a lesson. Marcus placed a single data tablet on the podium and looked up at the assembly. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost gentle, the tone of a teacher addressing students who just failed a test they'd been warned about. 17 days ago, Chancellor Vorn asked me a question. He wanted to know if I was threatening the Velkan Confederacy. I told him I was warning him. I'd like to explain the difference now, because I think the galaxy deserves to understand what just happened, and more importantly, why. He activated the tablet. Holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing star charts, ship movements, and tactical data that made several delegates gasp audibly. 437 years ago, humanity achieved faster-than-light travel. We were excited, naive, and desperately eager to find our place among the stars. We sent out first contact teams, diplomatic missions, cultural exchanges. We wanted to be part of this grand galactic civilization we'd discovered. Marcus's expression darkened. And in those first 50 years, we learned something crucial. We learned that the galaxy operates on a very simple principle. The strong do what they will, and the weak suffer what they must. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Several elder species shifted uncomfortably. We weren't conquered, not quite. We were just ... managed, kept in our place. Our trade routes were regulated. Our expansion was monitored. Our colonies were established only in systems no one else wanted. And whenever we objected, we were reminded of our place in the galactic hierarchy. 400 years versus 10,000. Infant species versus ancient empires. Marcus smiled coldly. We got the message. Loud and clear. He expanded the holographic display, showing a timeline that stretched back nearly 4 centuries. So we made a decision. A collective decision made by Earth's government, military, and scientific community. We decided that if we couldn't change the rules of the game, we'd change the game itself. We called it Project Phantom Dawn. The display shifted to show schematic ship designs, weapon systems, and technologies that made the assembled scientists lean forward with expressions ranging from fascination to horror. For 387 years, humanity has been preparing for exactly this scenario. Not because we wanted war, but because we knew eventually someone would push us too far. Someone would see our apparent weakness as an invitation. Someone would decide that the young species needed to be taught their place, Marcus's eyes found Vorm. We just didn't know who would be foolish enough to volunteer. Chancellor Vorn's mandibles clicked with fury. Lies. Our intelligence networks monitored your shipyards, your military installations, your research facilities. We knew your capabilities down to the last vessel. Yes, Marcus agreed pleasantly. You knew exactly what we wanted you to know. The 600 warships you mentioned? They're real. They're also obsolete, our last generation of conventional military vessels. We keep them visible, active, participating in routine patrols and defensive exercises. They're the stage dressing, Chancellor. The show we put on for intelligence services exactly like yours. He gestured, and the display showed something that made several delegates recoil. Ships that seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously, their hulls constructed from materials that bent light and sensor, waves around them like water flowing past a stone. Quantum displacement drives. We didn't invent faster-than-light travel, you elder species handed us that technology. But we perfected something you never considered necessary. Ships that exist partially out of phase with normal spacetime. They can't be detected by conventional sensors, because technically they're not entirely in this dimension. We call them Phantom-class vessels. We have 4,000 of them. The number hung in the air like a physical weight. 4,000 ships that the galaxy's most sophisticated intelligence networks had never detected. Then there are the weapons systems, Marcus continued, his tone remaining conversational despite the horror he was describing. Singularity projectors that create microscopic black holes with precise lifespans long enough to tear a ship apart from the inside, short enough to evaporate before they become a navigational hazard. Quantum disruptors that don't destroy matter so much as convince it that it never existed in the first place. And my personal favorite, neural network warfare systems. A new schematic appeared, a web of interconnected AI nodes spanning hundreds of star systems. Human artificial intelligence development was restricted by galactic law, remember? We were told that AI posed too much risk, that only elder species had the wisdom to develop synthetic minds safely. Marcus's smile was razor-sharp. So we developed them in secret. Thousands of them, networked together, each one capable of processing tactical data and executing strategic decisions at speeds that would make your fastest, organic minds look like they're thinking through molasses. They don't just control our ships, they predict your movements, analyze your tactics, and adapt faster than you can coordinate a response. The Shikari Collective spokesperson, a pulsing mass of bioluminescent tissue, finally spoke. This is impossible. The resource requirements alone, the energy expenditure, the raw materials, the industrial capacity, we would have detected something of this magnitude. Would you? Marcus pulled up another display, this one showing mining operations, manufacturing facilities, and research stations. You monitored the systems we claimed, the colonies you knew about. But space is vast, and humanity is patient. For every official colony we established, we built 3 hidden installations and systems that were surveyed and deemed unsuitable for habitation. Rogue planets in deep space. Dead star systems with no strategic value. The dark matter halos between spiral arms where no one bothers to look. He let that sink in for a moment. We built an entirely parallel civilization, Chancellor. A ghost empire that existed in the spaces between your maps. And we did it over the course of 4 centuries, slowly, carefully, one hidden facility at a time. We learned from you, learned how to look weak while becoming strong. Learned how to smile and bow while sharpening our knives. High Chancellor Vorm rose to his full height, his voice shaking with rage. You deceived us. You violated every principle of galactic law, every treaty regarding military development and AI research. Yes, Marcus said simply. We did, because your laws were designed to keep us weak. and we decided we'd rather be alive than obedient. The chamber erupted in chaos, delegates shouting, translation matrices overloading as dozens of species tried to speak simultaneously. Marcus waited patiently for the noise to subside, then continued as if there had been no interruption. Now, let's discuss what happened to the Velkin Confederacy over the past 17 days, because I want there to be no confusion about this. The displays shifted to tactical maps showing Velkin territory. Red markers indicated lost ships, destroyed facilities, and severed supply lines, hundreds of them, spreading like a disease through Confederate space. Asterisk, when you destroyed our research stations, you killed 15,000 civilians. You did it to make a point, to demonstrate your power. We understood the message, so we responded with one of our own. Marcus's voice remained level, but there was steel underneath. We didn't target your civilians. We didn't need to. We targeted your military infrastructure, your command and control networks, your logistics chains. Every ship you lost was a military vessel. Every facility we took was a strategic asset. He zoomed in on specific engagements. Your Ninth Fleet? Phantom-class vessels materialized in the middle of your formation and deployed singularity projectors before your ships could even detect their presence. Your supply convoys? Our AI networks predicted their routes 6 jumps in advance and positioned assets for perfect ambush conditions. Your military outpost at Velka 7? We used quantum displacement to board it, extract every piece of military intelligence in your databanks, and remove your entire garrison without firing a shot. They're all alive, by the way, in detention facilities you'll never find, being treated according to the same conventions you ignored when you killed our scientists. Thorne's massive frame seemed to sag. What do you want? Ah, finally, the right question. Marcus clasped his hands behind his back. Here's what's going to happen. First, the Galactic Council will formally recognize absolute human sovereignty over all systems we currently occupy, including the Kepler frontier. No disputes, no historical claims, no negotiations. What's ours is ours, permanently. Several delegates started to object, but Marcus continued without pause. Second, humanity will receive full voting rights on this council, with veto power equal to the elder species. No more junior member status. No more provisional anything. We are now your equals, and the laws of this galaxy will be written with our input. Third, all restrictions on human technological development, AI research, and military expansion are hereby void. We'll continue to develop whatever capabilities we deem necessary for our security, and we won't ask permission. The Thelonian delegate's crystalline structure chimed with indignation. And if we refuse these demands? Marcus met his gaze calmly. Then we'll continue doing what we've been doing for the past 17 days. We'll systematically dismantle the military capabilities of every species that opposes us until you understand that this isn't a negotiation. It's a statement of reality. You asked how many warships we had. Now you know we have thousands you can't detect. You assumed we lacked the will to use force. Now you know we're willing to erase entire fleets when provoked. You thought 400 years of galactic history made you invincible. He leaned forward slightly. But we have a saying on Earth. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. You elder species have been dominant for so long that you forgot something fundamental about existence. Nothing lasts forever. Empires rise and fall. The strong become complacent. And somewhere, always, someone younger and hungrier is watching, learning, preparing. Marcus straightened. We were that someone. We watched you for 4 centuries. We learned from every slight, every restriction, every casual dismissal. We became the thing you should have feared from the moment we achieved HFY Universe species with nothing to lose and everything to prove. Given 400 years to prepare for the day you'd finally push too far, the silence in the chamber was absolute. "So here's the new reality," Marcus said quietly. "Humanity is no longer the weak, junior species you can push around. We are now a pure power, with military capabilities that match or exceed your own. We don't want to conquer the galaxy. We're not interested in building an empire. We just want to be left alone to develop our civilization in peace. Grant us that, respect our sovereignty, and this unpleasantness ends. The Vulcan prisoners will be returned, the phantom fleets will withdraw, and we can all pretend this was just an unfortunate misunderstanding." "And if we agree?" Vaughn asked, his voice hollow. "Then you get to keep your confederacy, your fleets, your pride, or what's left of it. And more importantly, you never have to discover what else we've been building in the dark spaces between your maps. Because I promise you, Chancellor, what you've seen over the past 17 days..." Marcus's smile was genuinely terrifying. "That was us being merciful. That was us showing restraint. You really, really don't want to see what happens if we decide to stop holding back." He gathered his tablet. "The Council has 72 hours to ratify humanity's terms. After that, we'll assume you need another demonstration, and trust me, no one wants that. We'll be waiting for your decision." Marcus turned and walked toward the exit. As he reached the door, he paused and looked back at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. "Oh, and one more thing. Remember when I told Chancellor Vaughn to try me, and see what happens? Consider this lesson 1. We have lessons 2 through 10 prepared and ready to deploy if necessary. Each one is exponentially more severe than the last." His expression was completely serious. "Please, for the sake of every living being in this galaxy, don't make us go to lesson 2. You won't like it, and honestly, neither will we." He left the chamber to perfect silence. 68 hours later, the Galactic Council voted unanimously to accept humanity's terms. It was the fastest decision in the Council's 10,000-year history. The formal treaty was signed in a ceremony that was brief, awkward, and utterly lacking in the grandeur that usually accompanied such momentous occasions. Ambassador Marcus Webb signed for humanity with the same pen he'd used to initial diplomatic correspondence for 2 decades. No speeches were made. No celebration followed. When asked later by a human journalist how he felt about humanity's new status in galactic politics, Marcus simply smiled and said, "Relieved. We never wanted to be conquerors. We just wanted to be left alone." Sometimes, unfortunately, you have to break a few empires to make people understand that no is a complete sentence. The phantom fleets withdrew to their hidden bases. The Vulcan prisoners were returned, traumatized but alive. The galaxy began the slow, painful process of adjusting to a new reality where humanity was no longer the junior species, but a pure power whose capabilities remained mostly unknown in the years that followed. Historians would debate whether humanity's 4-century deception had been ethical, whether the response to Vulcan aggression had been proportional, whether the entire affair could have been handled differently. But no one, absolutely no one ever again suggested that humanity was bluffing about its military capabilities, because the galaxy had tried them, and they had seen what happened deep in a classified facility on Earth. In a chamber that officially didn't exist, Marcus Webb stood before a holographic display showing the true extent of Project Phantom Dawn. The 4,000 Phantom-class vessels he'd revealed to the Council were represented in blue. Behind them, in red, were the assets he hadn't mentioned, ships and weapons that made the Phantoms look like children's toys. Technologies that humanity had decided the galaxy wasn't ready to know about. Not yet. Maybe not ever. If they were lucky, Marcus traced a finger along the red markers, each one representing a capability that could reshape the very nature of interstellar warfare. We showed them lesson 1, he murmured to the empty room. Let's hope that's the only lesson they ever need. He deactivated the display and walked out, leaving the secrets of humanity's true power in the darkness, where they belonged, ready if needed, but hidden as long as possible, because that was the real lesson of Project Phantom Dawn. The most terrifying weapon was the one you never had to use. The ultimate deterrent was the unknown capability, the unspoken threat, the lesson you promised but never had to deliver. Humanity had learned patience over 4 centuries of careful deception. Now, the galaxy would learn it from them one way or another. End. Asterisk.